let's look at the greenhouse effect here in a little bit different way. So we're going to start again with your input of solar radiation coming in, and we're not going to show albedo here, but essentially you have net shortwave hitting the surface and long wave going out, and we are basically going to add the other components of radiation balance, like the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And the main thing here is to try and see the impact of greenhouse gases. So we'll come back to this later on, but the concentration of various substances, carbon dioxide concentration in the lower atmosphere has increased constantly from about the Industrial Revolution to the present, and there are some estimates here already of the future, but this has many assumptions in it about what kind of energy we will use, what our population will be, what kind of cars we will drive, how we will fly around, etc., etc. Right? So let's not worry about the percentages, but focusing on an easier terminology of parts per million. We were the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we were at 280 parts per million. Later on we will see how concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has changed in the past. It turns out that with ice ages and other factors, continents moving and so on, carbon dioxide concentrations have changed. The question is, how high was it before, and are we increasing it so much that it was never this high before? And what does it mean when we increase it by this much, right? That's the point. So it has continuously increased from 280 parts per million to currently in 2020 in August, September, I think we are at 418 parts per million or so. The estimated concentration from 2001 was 470. We haven't reached there, but there are many factors involved there. For example, how much is going into the ocean, how much reforestation may have happened to take out carbon dioxide, or how all the lockdowns because of COVID or reduced economic activities because of financial crisis and so on probably affected the carbon dioxide emissions by human beings. So all kinds of factors play into the concentrations. So the future estimates are, again, as I said, based on various assumptions of technology, population, energy generation, and so on and so forth. So how does enhanced greenhouse gas affect global warming? We can look at this graph here if it works. We will see this again later on, okay, in the last chapter when we come to ocean warming, global warming, and so on. So in the meantime, we said the concentration has gone from about 280 parts per million by volume. This unit is something you will hear again and again. It's worth remembering as ppm, but we don't say by volume, but because it can be by mass or by volume. So here it is by volume. The annual mean temperature, okay, you average all the months of the year to create an annual mean, because when you go in the past, the data is not as dense. You're not measuring it everywhere. You take whatever is available and you make an average and get a better estimate of the annual mean. And you can see that it goes up and down, but somewhere in the 1920s, these are anomalies. This is something I have to define as well. Anomaly, as you can imagine intuitively, is a deviation from the normal. So these are temperature change with respect to some baseline period. Typically we use mean temperature over 1961 to 1990 as a reference value, and we measure deviations from this reference. So the temperatures before 1920s were cooler than this average temperature over 1961 to 1990. There is no clear logic for picking a reference period or a base period. You can switch the base period, you will switch the temperature change, but you will not change the idea that temperatures are changing as a trend, which means they are changing towards one direction, right? So year to year they can go up or down. They reached similar values as the base period around 1920s, and they changed up and down around this base period, and from about mid 1970s they have continued to go up almost monotonically, except for this year to year changes. Okay, so we will define various concepts as to why temperatures change year to year, but they continue to warm along the way, right? Obviously has something to do with global warming, because that's the topic that we will be discussing. So that's a brief look at how global warming is happening, how things like greenhouse effects are being modified by human activities by increasing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere.